Hello, thank you for tuning in. You are listening to Inception Radio Network. This is Carol Carl with UFO Headline News for Thursday, July 2nd, 2015. Happy World UFO Day, everybody. That's right, July 2nd is World UFO Day. The dedication of this day is the cause of getting governments to fess up to the existence of UFOs. Here's an article from holidayinsights.com. The date for this special day was chosen because it is the date of the Roswell incident, a historical event leading to wide speculation and belief that aliens have indeed visited us. Organizers are downright serious about getting the overall public to believe we indeed have been visited by aliens from outer space. They're seeking to get the United States and other governments to admit what they already believe is a reality. Have we been visited by extraterrestrials? You make the call. And here's just a little recap of the Roswell incident. July 2nd, 1947, is the date well known to UFO believers, and says this article, isn't everyone? And says this newscaster, we wish. Anyway, on this date, Mac Brazel, a rancher in northwest Roswell, in the state of New Mexico, discovered wreckage of a metallic object on his ranch. The wreckage and the metal it was made of was strange. He contacted military authorities who investigated the site and removed the wreckage. The first military reports referenced a mysterious, unidentified flying object. These reports were later rescinded, leading to a wide speculation and claims of a massive government cover-up of the discovery of UFOs from outer space. It also sparked fear of a UFO invasion and rumors of other incidents. And, says the article, that speculation is alive and well today. In a brief companion piece from Seattle, PI, Roswell, New Mexico, Associated Press. Festival organizers in Roswell are predicting this weekend's UFO celebration will bring thousands of visitors to the New Mexico city. The Roswell Daily Record reports that last year's UFO festival attracted a record-breaking number of tourists to the so-called alien city. With Cosmicon and a sci-fi film festival also taking place this weekend, tourism officials hope this city's numbers will be even higher. International UFO Museum Executive Director Mark Briscoe expects between 7,000 and 10,000 visitors this weekend. He says people are fascinated by the 1947 incident in which some claim a UFO crashed in Roswell. Roswell Public Affairs Director Deanna Phillips says the festival is the city's signature event, calling Roswell the only place in the world that can truly lay claim to such a celebration. And now we'll zip across the pond until we come to the United Kingdom, where the Mirror Online brings us this. UFO spotted at Blur gig at Hyde Park as concert goer records park life on mobile phone. Cara O'Neill gets a byline for this. This newscaster had to educate herself on Blur and their tune, Park Life. It's really cool. You should check, and thank you, YouTube. But here's the story. The footage appears to show two bright lights appearing suddenly in the sky before they disappear into the night. In the footage, which was shot on the mobile phone of concertgoer Darmond Nagel, two mysterious bright white lights are seen shooting across the sky just to the right side of the stage as the band launch into the chorus. The bright lights hover in the sky for a very brief moment before they suddenly disappear into thin air just as quickly as they came. Other festival attendees are seen holding their arms toward the sky as they dance and sing to the band's music, with most of them seeming to be unaware of the Blink and You'll Miss It UFO light show. And even Darmond was oblivious to this mysterious object at the time, having simply pulled his phone out to record the band singing their famous hit. The footage was recorded as the band performed a 23-song set in London on June 20th. And while we're in the area, we'll check this story from the LiverpoolEcho.com, United Kingdom. This one has a byline for Abigail O'Leary. There's video. The headline is, Does this video capture a UFO hovering over Mariner's Wharf? A mysterious flying object was captured on film by a motorist who saw it hovering above Mariner's Wharf. The video was taken by Paul Douglas, who was driving down Upper Parliament Street toward the waterfront when he saw something unusual in the sky on Monday night. Paul, from Aigburth, said, quote, It was about 10:20, and I was driving when I saw something strange in the sky. It was over the marina, and it was just a mad object in the sky. It looked sort of like a drone, but it also had 3 green lights on it, end quotes. Taxi driver Paul said he pulled over in amazement at what was drifting through the sky and started filming the object as it moved closer towards land, then back out towards the water. He added, quote, "It was hovering over the water, and I tried to follow it in the car as I was coming down Upper Parliament Street. As it was hovering, the birds were making a funny noise and going a bit mad. Then after a couple of minutes, it started going out towards the water again. It was pretty high in the sky as it was floating over the water. I went to the waterfront to ask 2 fishermen if they saw it as it moved, but they didn't," end quotes. Paul described seeing 3 green lights sitting horizontally across the object. He added, quote, "It looked a bit like horizontal traffic lights. There were 3 green lights and then 1 different colored light on the end," end quotes. Zooming in the other direction across the pond, we will come to the east coast of the United States of America, the state of Maryland, the city of Parkville, where UFOstalker.com brings us this sighting. MUFON gave this a case number of 67459. It occurred on the 30th of June and was reported that same day. The sighting specifics here in this case include a viewing distance that's not known, a sighting duration of 30 seconds, unknown features to the object. The flight path is described as a straight line path. The object shape, fireball. The weather factors unknown. Here's the first-person account of this sighting. "It was possibly a meteorite or space junk falling to Earth. I was in my front yard looking toward the east at the very bright moon. I turned to look over my house and saw an amazing reddish light cruising across the sky, going southwest to northwest. I wanted to run into my house to grab my camcorder, but I knew I would not have time to get it, so I stayed and watched this light for about 20 more seconds as it finally faded away. The whole event lasted about 30 seconds. I've seen satellites and the space station from my house, and this was very different. The intensity of the light was brilliant, nothing like I have seen before." Meandering south, we will come to the state of Virginia, city of Mechanicsville. MUFON case number 67454. The date of the event, 6/26/2015. Date submitted, 6/30/2015. In this case, there was a viewing distance of 501 feet to 1 mile. Sighting duration undisclosed. Object features unknown. Object flight path, a straight line path. Object shape, fireball. Weather factors unknown. Sighting details. On June 26, 2015, between approximately 11:34 p.m. and 11:42 p.m., I witnessed a UFO. Below is the description of this event. After driving through Pimlico Drive in Mechanicsville, Virginia, I noticed in the east a red-orange fireball behind the tree line, flying west with a very slight northward bearing. I turned and parked on Christopher Paul Drive. I observed no breeze or windy conditions, with a scattered and partially overcast sky. The object was flying below the clouds as it was bright and clear. The object had no sound, appeared to be going about the speed of a prop plane, and wobbled as it flew. My view became obstructed by rooftops, and after I moved further away from the houses to get a better view, the object's light faded out. I estimate that the object flew at least as far as the I-295, somewhere north of the Pole Green Road exit. I used the SkyGuide app and found out there were no satellites or rockets of any kind during that time frame. Wobbling ourselves south, we will come to Orlando, Florida. MUFON case number 67460. Date submitted, 6/30/2015. Date of the event, 6/30/2015. Sighting specifics, viewing distance, unknown. Sighting duration, undisclosed. Object features, unknown. Apparently there's no application for a description of a flight path here. The object shape, Saturn-like. Weather factors, not known. Sighting details, as always, in the first person. I was walking with my other half and noticed 2 lights in the sky that looked unusually bright. One appeared to be a very bright star in the distance, and the other a very large and very bright star with a hazy glow around it. We both stopped to observe further, thinking it was an airplane that would soon come into view. We live in a neighborhood with a heavy flight pattern for airplanes. The 2 bright lights did not move or change direction. The bigger and brighter light appeared to be bobbing. I took out my iPhone to video it, and when I looked at the video later, I noticed the bigger bright light was pulsating and turned into a Saturn-like ring. We continued to walk for 45 more minutes, and the light remained unchanged. Definitely not a star or an airplane. If you're curious enough to want to examine some of these images and the visuals for yourselves, go to InceptionRadioNetwork.com to the forum. Click Forum, and a tab will appear that says UFO Headline News. By clicking that magical tab, you can find your way to the links of all the content and visuals for these broadcasts. And now imagine yourselves going slightly north and then west until we come to the state of New Mexico in the United States. And we don't actually have to land because apparently someone observed this while in an airplane over the state of New Mexico. MUFON gave this a number of 67449. It occurred on the 17th of June, but was not reported until the 30th. The viewing distance here is over 1 mile, and I believe that's looking down in this case rather than up. The sighting duration undisclosed. Object features none. Object flight path, well, stationary. Object shape, disk. Weather factors unknown. Here are the sighting details. I was flying from Chicago to L.A., and while over the desert, I was taking pictures of formations in the desert. I noticed 3 bright lights, we were at 34,000 feet, that hurt my eyes to look at. I grabbed my camera and began taking pictures of these 2 bright lights. Then suddenly a smaller light next to them began flashing, but not at a regular pulse. After I got home and started looking at the details of the images, the timestamps were not what they should have been for the images. Where the lights were, there was nothing in that area for miles and miles as far as structures, houses, or any signs of life, and they were down in an area where they wouldn't have been seen from the ground, because there were desert walls all around them. I could make out some type of image just on the edges of the light, and it looked a metallic gray. There was a smaller light. It was right in the middle of the big light, and it began blinking after I started taking the pictures. But it wasn't a steady blink. It would blink, 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 so it wasn't random. My first thought was UFOs, as I kind of laughed it off and figured it was a government thing. Looking directly at these bright lights hurt my eyes, like looking at the sun even at 34,000 feet. I said something to the lady sitting next to me, and she just said she wondered what they were, too. California, the city of Los Angeles, where UFO Stalker brings us this. MUFON case number 67479. Date of the event, 6/30/2015. Date submitted, 7/1/2015. The viewing distance under the specifics here was over 1 mile. The duration of the sighting undisclosed. Object features unknown. The flight path was a straight-line path. It had a circular shape, and there were no apparent weather factors that had any bearing on this sighting. Here it is in first person. Last night, my wife and I went outside to witness the conjunction of Venus and Jupiter. I set up my Meade ETX90 with a 26mm lens. I took a couple of pictures of the full moon with my Galaxy S4 using a film negative to negate the brightness of the moon in the eyepiece. After viewing the moon for 10 or 15 minutes, I turned my telescope on the conjunction. I looked through the eyepiece to make sure I had them centered, as my wife had never had a chance to look at planetary objects via a telescope. I showed her both planets, and with Jupiter, you could see 3 of its moons coming off at the 7 o'clock position, and 1 at the 1 o'clock. These appeared as small pinpoint objects. I had just taken over the eyepiece once again, and as I looked at the conjunction, a pinpoint, pulsating or rapidly blinking light flew through my view behind Jupiter. Unfortunately, the occurrence happened so quickly I didn't have a chance of getting a pic of it. After it passed through my field of view, I quickly looked up with my naked eye to see if I could make it out, the red pinpoint, but it was not found in the sky. I can't even begin to describe the speed of what I saw, nor what it could have been. The one thing I'm definitely sure of is that it flew behind Jupiter. The rest of the evening was quiet, with the normal air traffic for our area of Los Angeles. Staying in the great golden state of California, we have one more sighting. This is in an undisclosed city, however. MUFON's given it a case number of 67473. Date submitted 7/1/2015. Date of the event 6/30/2015. The sighting specifics include a viewing distance of over a mile. The duration of the sighting hasn't been disclosed, nor have the object's features. It had the traditional object flight path of hovering and then a straight path. The object shape star-like. And, well, we all know about what the weather was. There didn't seem to be any at the time. Here are the details. I was returning home in Rancho Cucamonga, California on 6/30/2015 at 2300 Pacific Daylight Time. I stepped out of my automobile and looked northward and observed what appeared to be a bright orange star or planet, approximately 40 degrees above the horizon. It was not moving, and I had enough time to set up a small telescope I have in my garage. However, by the time I had proper alignment, the object lost intensity and faded in color. My last observation of it was a descending motion of 1 or 2 degrees, then it vanished. I think what I saw was a flare, but it must have been at a very high altitude. Strangest thing I've seen around here. Headline: Houston's new spaceport will launch spacecraft horizontally. Byline for Colin Crum, filed to Spacelopnik, you decide. After being turned down for one of NASA's 3 surviving space shuttles that actually flew in space and enduring a 2-year review and approval process, Houston, Texas just became the 10th space launch site in America to win an operator's license from the Federal Aviation Administration. And those launches can happen horizontally, a key element in the future of commercial space travel. The FAA's license grants the Houston launch site at Ellington Airport approval for horizontally launched space vehicles as well as space vehicle assembly. Eventually, this permission could allow microsatellite and space tourism industries to develop in Houston, providing a major boost to the economy. Because Houston's already home to NASA's Johnson Space Center, redeveloping Ellington Airport into a commercial space hub builds on a legacy of America's history in space. Horizontally launched space vehicles could include a future, quote, single stage to orbit, end quotes, vehicle, such as the Skylon concept from reaction engines, or more realistically, a, quote, air to launch to orbit, end quotes, configuration, such as the enormous Stratolaunch system concept of Paul Allen and Burt Rutan. This would be a mothership that carries the spacecraft from the ground to a launch speed and altitude, where the two then separate. While the commercial space industry had a tough day over the weekend, there still are plenty of encouraging signs for the industry's future. In Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, Spaceport America's Visitor Center opened last week. Even German automaker Audi is going to get in on the action, announcing that they'll send a rover to the moon in 2017 as part of Google's Lunar X Prize. Today's announcement is pivotal, but we still have to exercise patience. It won't be tomorrow or even next year, but the new Houston site will someday be a gateway for new markets and emerging technologies. When the future you is ready to boldly go where few have gone before, Houston will be the city to facilitate your spaceflight fantasies. From a website called capitalberg.com, a byline for Seduf Book, soon Martians may see a UFO. Soon the silence on Mars is about to be disrupted by a slight swoosh. Soon Martians may see a UFO. The rocks and dust that cover the red planet might be in for a bigger thrill than they've had in ages, as NASA has unveiled a new boomerang-shaped drone designed to fly the skies of our nearest galactic neighbor. It's called the PRANDTL-M, Prandtl-M would be the name of the craft. That stands for Preliminary Research Aerodynamic Design to Land on Mars. It was designed by engineering students, which benefited from a NASA internship in 2013. The glider will be carried by the next Mars rover, which is not going to be launched until 2022. Until then, the glider will be tested here on Earth, where it will be launched later this year from a balloon at an altitude of 3,000 meters. Then, in 2016, it's scheduled for a more extensive test, which will total 5 hours of flight. Finally, the last earthly test will see it deployed, actually as it would deploy on Mars. For this test, the glider still needs to be fitted with foldable wings so that it can take up as little space as possible before it's launched. It has a wingspan of 2 feet, and on Earth the craft weighs in at only 1.17 kilograms. On Mars, due to the much lower gravitational pull, it would weigh more than half of that, 425 grams. The lightness will be determined by the material from which it will be made, which will either be carbon fiber or fiberglass. The glider will actually be folded like a shirt and attached to the CubeSat mini-satellite, which itself will be attached to the next Mars rover. The satellite will deploy when in orbit over Mars, and then it will unleash the parental M to Martian airs. The aircraft could reach our red neighbor by 2024, the development team says. But what will it do there, you ask? Well, it will take high-resolution photos and search for the best possible landing site for the manned mission to Mars planned for 2030. The scientists are then able to determine whether those sites that parental M will see are sustainable. How much of what is there will remain the same. So the Martian skies are the next frontier, yet only a small step in the next bigger goal, which is the very ambitious NASA project, the Martian colony. Writer Elizabeth Howell from Space.com contributed this. Rosetta sees signs of water ice on comet's surface. Patches of water ice appear to be speckled across the surface of a comet, according to a new study using observations from a European space probe. The Rosetta spacecraft, currently orbiting comet 67P Churyumov-Gerasimenko, spotted 120 bright, reflective spots on the surface of the comet that were at least a few meters or 6 feet in size. While their composition is still being examined, the spots tend to appear in areas that are shaded by the sun, scientists noted. The researchers also note that there have been no significant changes to the spots after a month of observations. Quote, water ice is the most plausible explanation for this occurrence and the properties of these features, unquote, said Antoine Pomerol, a physicist of the University of Bern, in a statement. Quote, at the time of our observations, the comet was far enough from the sun such that the rate at which the water ice could sublimate would have been less than 1 millimeter per hour of incident solar energy, he said. Pomerol is the lead author of a study analyzing the bright spots. Quote, by contrast, if carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide ice had been exposed, it would rapidly have sublimated when illuminated by the same amount of sunlight. Thus, we would not expect to see that type of ice stable on the surface at this time, end quotes. The spots are up to 10 times brighter than the average surface brightness of the comet as measured by Rosetta. Sometimes they appear together, particularly when they're at the bottom of cliffs. The research team speculates that's because the cliff wall recently has eroded or collapsed, revealing material below the dusty surface. In other locations, bright spots have been observed alone. Scientists believe these instances represent objects that lifted off the surface when the comet's motion was more active. These objects, however, were not moving fast enough to escape the comet's gravitational pull altogether. Comets are known to be rich in ices based on observations of the trails they leave behind. When comets approach the sun, the heat of the star warms the comet's surface and causes the ice to melt. This process also releases dust clumped near the ice, but not all of that dust escapes, leaving the surfaces of comets very dark as the dust settles down back to the surface or fails to leave it in the first place. It's not clear when the ice patch is formed, but the team has 2 hypotheses. The first suggests that when 67P was closest to the sun, cometary activity pushed the icy chunks into shadowed regions and protected them from the sun. Alternatively, perhaps carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide beneath the surface pushed the ice around while the comet was farther from the sun. The team also did some tests in the lab to see what happens when water ice is combined with other minerals. When this ice is exposed to simulated solar illumination, a dust layer of a few millimeters thick is created, the researchers discovered. This thin layer could be enough to obscure the ice below on comets, but if a bigger chunk of dust is pushed aside by cometary activity, it would show off the ice below. From Space.com, with a byline for writer Calla Cofield, Pluto and Charon starting to come into focus. Pluto and its largest moon, Charon, posed for a solemn portrait taken by NASA's New Horizons probe, which is only 2 weeks away from its close encounter with the dwarf planet. The newest snapshot of Pluto and Charon shows 2 icy gray circles hovering in a pitch-black void. In previous images, the 2 objects often looked like highly pixelated smudges of color, barely indistinguishable as spheres. But with New Horizons only about 10 million miles, or 16 million kilometers, away from Pluto, and closing that distance by more than 30,000 miles, or 48,000 kilometers, every hour, the view of these unexplored worlds is getting clearer every day. Quote, looking at pictures on the website, you can see that Pluto and Charon are becoming more distinct in their surface features, end quotes. Alice Bowman, the missions operation manager for New Horizons, said on June 30th in a mission statement, quote, it's getting pretty exciting, and every day is bringing new features into light, end quotes. New Horizons hopes to reveal a detailed look at the surface of Pluto, study its atmosphere, and much more. The new portrait of Pluto and Charon was taken by the Long Range Reconnaissance Imager, or LORI, the instrument on board New Horizons. These images are not only for scientific and aesthetic purposes, but also for navigational ones, according to a statement from the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory in Laurel, Maryland. With nearly 3 billion miles, 4.8 billion kilometers between them, it takes about 4.5 hours to send a signal from Maryland Control Center to New Horizons, Bowman said. As a result, team members have to tell the probe what to do, such as which instruments to point at Pluto, long before the probe actually does it. When the probe makes its close flyby of Pluto on July 14th, the team will not be able to make any last-minute adjustments. Instead, New Horizons runs pre-written command sequences, most of which were written years before they will be executed. These command sequences must also indicate where Pluto is located relative to the probe, and thus where New Horizons should point its instruments. The New Horizons team has been constantly updating that navigational information as the probe moves closer and can obtain more precise information about Pluto's location. Earlier this month, the team executed a course correction to ensure the spacecraft didn't arrive at its close encounter point too early. That kind of miscalculation could cause the probe to take photos of empty space instead of the dwarf planet, researchers said. In the next few days, Alice Bowman said, the New Horizons team will be uploading the command sequence that will guide the probe through this historic flyby. There's also a possibility the team will have to execute another course correction. Quote, and of course, we'll be getting down lots of science data and optical navigation data, end quotes, Bowman said. Quote, it's going to be great, end quote, she said. And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening. Happy World UFO Day, everybody. This is Carol Carl. To follow the stories you've heard today, please visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com. Click on UFO Headline News under the forum.